Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Before I get into the video, I'm just going to run around the car very quickly and just touch on a few things that I've done to the car, but not necessarily filmed just because they were fairly insignificant, but I'll just round up a few of those items right now. First one, which is not that insignificant I suppose, is the engine bay is looking nice and red and shiny at the moment. That's because I ended up spraying that myself in the garage. Didn't film anything of that because I did that pretty much the day after I got the car picked up from the paint shop, having done the interior, so I didn't really think that you needed to watch me sand, prepare and paint the engine bay after watching that. Yeah, I just did that in the garage with a rattle can. Came out alright, much better looking now than it did originally. Other things to note, I have put the column back in. I don't know whether I picked up on this. So that there is the brake fluid reservoir. It feeds both the front and rear master cylinder and also feeds the clutch. Made a little bracket which sits in there. Another thing that I've done is, if you look in here, you can see the camber adjustment has been extended. So I think I've got a little video clip that I filmed on my phone showing how I've done this, but essentially all I've done is used the router. I bolted this top mount and that top mount together to give me a bit of a guide, ran the router in there, and yeah, that came out really well. It means that I can offset this as far inboard as I can, and now that's given me loads of camber, which means that I can dial some off here and gain myself some clearance to the strut at the top up there. What else have I done? Rear view mirror is on. Coming into here, I've got a heat box. That is to replace the standard one which sits under here. Weighs quite a lot. This one I actually got off Amazon. This was a bit of a bargain. I think it was about 50 quid. The blows in there are quite strong actually. And then this will get plumbed to some vents in the dash. And the dash is something else that I've done. It's currently up there, so the standard flat Volvo dash, which I was going to put in here, I've ditched that, is because of the cage. Because of this bar specifically, I actually managed to get it fitted in there really nicely with all of these bars, and it looked okay, but then when I added this bar in, I had to cut a load more out of the dash to make it actually fit in there. So much to the point it looked pretty rubbish, so I've decided get rid of the dash completely. This is lighter. I do have some vents which will sit up here that will go to the heater box for demisting. That was nice and easy to fit. Inside obviously painted. Put the handbrake back in there. And one last thing I think that I've not covered is the throttle pedal, which is out of a Polo. It's electric, and I made a bracket, welded it to the bulkhead, and I did that to paint it. Oh, and one other thing, this little shelf here is for the power steering pump, which is going to be inside the cabin. So that is pretty much it. I think you're up to date. If there's anything that I've missed that you spot that I've not spoken about, stick them down in the comments and I will give you a bit of an update on that. But yeah, now that is all covered, I think we will get into the meat of this video, which is running the brake lines. So I've got brake calipers on all four corners. I've got the dual master cylinder brake pedal fitted. All I need to do is run some lines to them now. Not using any of the standard lines. I'm going to be running conifer brake lines inside the vehicle so they are protected. Also going to be adding a bias lever onto the transmission tunnel. Let's get going with it. Right guys, so first things first, I've got brake lines fitted to the front, and as you can see, fitted to the rear as well. And over here I've made a start on actually making the brake lines. So that will be the front master cylinder. That is then going to this T-fitting here. I'm using an existing threaded hole on the strut tower because I don't want to put any extra holes in here, and that seems like a pretty decent location. So the next thing for me to do is to run a line from here through this grommet here, come out this side, and down to here. So that's a fairly easy one there. And then from the other side, down here along the chassis rail, along the back of the bulkhead or the front of the bulkhead, round here into this grommet here, and then down to the other side. When I get to the rear, this one is going to have to come across here, down through the bulkhead onto the tunnel. Going to run along the tunnel to the bias valve, come along to the back and get split over there, round about here somewhere, and then I'm going to drill some holes in the rear tubs to get to that fitting right there. So yeah, simple enough. All of my fittings are M10 by 1 with the exception of these ones in the Willwood. They do have a DIN or a bubble type flare on the end of them still. It's just the thread into the master cylinder is slightly different. It's a 3/8 imperial thread of some description. So yeah, going to continue with doing this, and actually I'll show you how to flare the end of the line. Right, so this is the next brake line. It is the front right hand side of the car, and the first thing you want to do is make sure you have a nice clean cut on the end of your pipe, and you do that by getting a proper pipe cutter. This is just a fairly cheap one, you get it from B&Q or whatnot, but that will give you a nice straight edge to start from. And the next thing you want to do, and this is very important because I've done this before and it is a pain in the butt, you've got to make sure that you put this fitting on here, because once you flare that in, you cannot do that. And on something like this, which has got a load of bends, if I try and feed it from this end, yeah, it doesn't go on. So make sure you put that fitting on. Next thing, you'll want a tool like this. This is quite a good tool. This is one I've borrowed off Nick Vaughan from Team Prawn Racing, so thank you very much, Nick. And there are some cheaper ones available that you'll find on Amazon and eBay, but these are considerably easier to use and they make a much better job of it. So you'll want to put this into this end here, and you'll see there's a line there, and that tube needs to line up with that. But they do give you a handy plug which threads in here, which goes exactly to that mark, and you can just push that till it hits there, and once that's there you can start to snug these ones down. Once those are snugged down, you can take this out, and because I'm doing a DIN type flare, there are different types of these by the way, and it's worth noting this is DIN and this one here SAE, so that will do your double flares or inverted flares, which is more common on American vehicles. Now before we thread this in here, you want to make sure that this end is lubricated, and they do usually come with the necessary. So that just gets dipped into the grease, and we thread this into here. You can then give that a tighten up and then back it out. And then to release the pipe, take these 10 mils out, and you should have perfect little bubble flare. So the next thing to do is clean off that grease that is on there, because you don't want that to contaminate your brake fluid, and to make sure there are no burrs left from that. So use a Scotch pad or a little bit of wet and dry to make sure that is nice and smooth, and that is your fitting done. And there you go, that is that brake line in place. It's just a 11mm open-ended spanner to nip that up. You don't want to be cranking that up really tight, just snugging that up so it seals nicely on that flare, and then on the other side, and there you go, that's how that looks. Right, so that's one corner done. Next line comes out of here, across the bulkhead, into the other side. There we go, front brakes are done. Technically, if I put some brake fluid in there, the front brakes would work. Next thing to do is the rear master cylinder. Like I said, that goes through the bulkhead and towards the back of the car. You may notice I have put a couple of these little clips in here. They're just these. I have put a little hole in the bulkhead in those locations just to clip those in. makes it nice and neat and stops it from flapping about. Right, so before I can make the brake line that goes from the master cylinder into the cabin, I have to decide where I want this, and this is the brake bias valve. It's a OBP one, and basically it restricts pressure to the rear calipers. So as you crank this forwards, more bias goes to the front because the rear brakes aren't working as much. So I want to mount this somewhere where I can easily access it, but not easily knock this lever. Maybe I do want it there, I don't really know. So that's why I put the seat in. I put in this gear shifter. It is on this rusty mounting, which is a bit of a legacy item. It's something that I made for this car pretty much when I first got it. Never painted it, it's all rusty. I don't know whether I'm going to paint it. I might leave it just because I know it pisses off Nick so much, because I used to just make things, never painted it, and it just went rusty. So I might just leave that as it is. But for the meantime, I've just got it there so I can decide where this goes. So it might go here and it might go there. There's not too bad a place actually. Yeah, okay, I'll make a bracket, I'll stick this there, and then I know where I need to run the lines now. Right, so the line from the bias valve to the rear bench is complete, and I've decided to split it at the rear bench here instead of going over the cage to the centre there and teeing it off there, because two reasons. One, I didn't want to go over the cage, so I would have passed it through here, but the problem is that this gap is too small to fit the fittings through. So once I've passed it through there and flared the end, it's not ever coming out of there unless I cut it and make a new one. Also, I didn't want a line running on the rear bench and across here in case I ever needed to load the back up with any wheels, tyres or anything like that. I didn't want to be snagging the brake line across there, and it probably would have looked a little bit messy. So that's why I decided to tee it off there. I'm going to run it along the underside of the bench here, along the body, along here, so it's all neatly tucked out the way. I've obviously got to do it both sides, so there's a bit more work to do. And you may have noticed I've used a four-way fitting there, and that's not a mistake. That is because I'm going to be fitting one of these, and this is a fuel pressure sensor. It goes up to 200 bar, and it's from a VW TFSI engine. Normally goes in the fuel rail, but it has got a M10/1 thread on it, so that threads in very nicely there, and that will enable me to display brake bias and brake pressure on my dash. Only thing is, I do need another one. I can't just run one in the rear line. There's got to be one in the front as well. So if we look over here, you can see one sticking out bulkhead there. So I'll be honest, I did forget to fit this earlier, but I've gone ahead and done it, and I'll show you around front. This is where I've put it, and you can see it goes straight against the bulkhead through a grommet, and the sensor is on the inside of the car. Quite happy where that is. It was a bit of a faff to fit, but I think that's quite a neat place for that to go. Anyway, let's crack on.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 yo, go, go. Hustle hard, hustle every single day. I'll be making moves till I'm buried.
So there we are. That is all of the brake lines complete, and that has taken absolutely ages to do. Last thing to do now is chuck some brake fluid in there and bleed them up, and hopefully see if they work. That'll be where I hid those clips that I spent absolutely ages looking for. Oh, what a prick. So we do have a brake pedal, but it does travel quite far, so I might have to put larger master cylinders so it goes stiffer a bit quicker, or perhaps some inline residual pressure valves. Basically, it keeps pressure in the brake lines, so you're starting off at 2 or 3 psi, so you don't have to make up that slack in this first bit here. So it's moving fluid as soon as you press the brake. But there's no way really that I can see if the brakes are working properly until the car is running and I'm moving at more than a snail's pace. For now, it's all bled up and I've got some brakes, so that helps a lot. So when I do take this out the garage, it is a bit of a pig to try and stop it. I've run over my foot many times trying to stop this from crashing through the garage door. So there you go, guys, that is it for another video. Hope you found this one mildly interesting. Not that fitting brake lines is particularly interesting, but we are one stage closer from this car getting onto the track. It should hopefully stop now. Next thing I suppose is making it go. Anyway, guys, hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already done so. If you've got any questions, drop them down in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.